All right, I think we're good to get going here, Tracy. You all set?
How's it?
All right, let's get started. All right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you may be. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. This is the second of our webinar series here for the Competitive Marketing Summit. And I just want to remind you, as you are using the Zoom platform, that there is a chat feature as well as a Q&A panel. So please use those. You can access that depending on your screen is set up by just pointing your mouse cursor down at the bottom, and you see those two facilities down there. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A or go ahead and chat us directly. So without further ado, we are excited to invite Tracy Huckabee from Principles Technologies to share her wisdom around best practices on creating successful and interactive marketing content. Next slide, please. So Tracy works for one of our vendor sponsors, but as well as a trusted vendor in the industry, Principles Technologies. Tracy again will shed some light on how kind of her experience and in marketing and how this kind of dovetails into our mission in both product marketing and competitive marketing. Will help our own careers. So again, like I said, super excited to have you on board, Tracy. So one last thing, next slide, please. Amongst our title sponsor, Principles Technologies today, I'd also like to thank the rest of our series sponsors for keeping our lights on during this virtual time. So hopefully we will be able to parlay these sessions into a live session at some point. So let's keep our fingers crossed for that. Maybe we'll see an announcement come out in the next month or so. All right, Tracy, with that, I will pass it over to you and thank you.
All right, thank you, Ben. As Ben mentioned, my background is in learning. So I've been in the learning industry, designing online learning really for about the last 22 years. And it's in the field of e-learning, it can be hard to keep your attention because some e-learning content compliance training can be very dry, but there is a lot of science that we're bringing to designing online learning to make it really engaging. And so what I'm doing today is sharing some of those best practices from the field of e-learning or online learning to the field of interactive content. So there's a lot of overlap between grabbing and keeping attention in the learning industry and the marketing industry, and more it's looking more and more alike. So I wanted to start off with, the why. We're all competing in this attention economy. There's very limited time, and we're all being pulled by a lot of different things. You can add to chat some of the things that are vying for our attention, but it's things like, one, our personal lives, our children, spouses, our homes, work life, and then all the things on our phone. I mean, this is a photo of somebody potentially in traffic looking at their phones, and I see that every day. We're so tied to the content that's on our phones, and it could be notifications or social media, videos, emails, phone calls. But as brands, it's important for us to also grab the consumer's attention so that we can engage them with our content, educate them about our products and services, and ideally persuade them to become a loyal customer and then to share that word. So one of the tools that we can do to do that, is interactive content. So when I say that, what I'm referring to is digital media that consumers are actively engaging with. So perhaps an interactive video that plays and then it will pause at different points and ask the user to make a choice. and then they can jump around and sort of craft their own experience through a video versus just watching a video. So that's what makes it interactive content. There are a lot of different ways to have, collateral and content in your campaigns. I'm specifically talking about interactive content, but a lot of the strategies that I'm going to share really apply to a lot of different types of collateral. And I think more and more marketers are moving to, investing in interactive content because we're seeing that consumers truly love it. So 93% of marketers are rating interactive content as highly effective when it comes to educating prospective customers. So that's a really good reason to spend the resources to get it right. And the win there on this slide is they love interactive content when it's very well designed. So when it's visual and has some of these other strategies that have been used to design it up front. So we'll go through how to really design that interactive content to engage, reward, and then empower your learners. I'm going to say learners probably a lot in this. I mean, your consumers or your potential customer base with interactive content. So engagement is just trying to initially grab them, to get them to look at it. So one of the most important things is to make it eye-catching, make it visually pleasing. So visual content is about 40 times more likely to be shared on social media. So it really should be something that you spend your time up front. It shouldn't be text heavy. It should be absorbing. It should be a user experience that they can really jump around in and craft their own unique journey through, and have a sense of play, a sense of fun, maybe elicit some emotion. And you don't necessarily have to use all of these strategies, but maybe a combination of them. The consumers really love to play around with content, as I mentioned, and they love particularly to play in a way that gives them a sense of what it might be like to engage with you or to purchase and use your products. So those are some other ways that you can prompt that play and exploring. And I'm going to show you an example here. So this is a piece of interactive content that we designed and built at Principal Technologies. So the original content for this interactive piece was hands-on testing of Dell servers. So that testing generated a lot of facts. We wrote those facts up into a really compelling report, but that was a very, it's a report that can be distributed, it's PDF. We could also make it as an interactive PDF. But then we also, because we know people like to consume this content in different ways, we produced a video that told more of the story, the benefit story of those findings, those outcomes. And then this was the third piece of collateral, again, from the same content. We're making it stackable. That was interactive content. So thinking about the tips that I just shared, it's more visual. So it's color-coded. Each of these three colors represents a different section of content. You see there's not a ton of text. There is some text, but it's very succinct and to the point. It's chunked into bite-sized pieces, and it's prompting exploration. So there are at least 3 different ways to navigate through. You can just click on a section and jump to that section. You can use this side menu, and then you can also just scroll. And this looks great on phones as well. And embedded within this really brief, probably 10-minute or less experience are a lot of different formats of interactive content. So if you are somebody that wants that deep dive, you can click right here and get that original report. You can get an infographic summarizing it. There, if you click here, this is where you get the video that I mentioned that's eliciting the emotion. It's giving more user studies, case examples of real life usage of those benefits. And then there's even a little play element here where you can play a quick game or sort of a quiz-like game with just 3 questions. Again, it's getting them to play with it. Some animated GIFs here. And then there's a lot more data behind this that if you want to, you can filter it quickly and then download or share any of this content. So again, just another format where we think it grabs their attention because it is so visual, it's easy to use, it's quick, you can jump around. So that's an example there. Any questions so far, Ben, before I keep going?
Yeah. So have you seen any trends in like specific pieces of interactive content collateral that maybe has performed better during the pandemic than you haven't seen, or trending maybe a little differently? Guess
well, you're seeing things that are easily used on mobile certainly are sort of in the lead, versus now we're starting to see movement into augmented reality and virtual reality, but I think there's still a lot of just quick mobile experiences that can be game-like. We're going to show a lot of different formats as well, but certainly the virtual experience through COVID has become more and more important. Live virtual elements are still really popular as well. Hope that answers your question. But we're going to show I'll show a lot of different examples and formats of things that you can do that I'll do well. All right, great question. All right, so once you grab their attention, you're going to lose them unless you give them something that's really beneficial and rewarding of that attention. So here's some strategies that you can use, again, to really keep that attention. One, you don't want it to be too tech heavy if you're in a tech field. Make it really conversational, make it to the point. Don't include a lot of extraneous information, or like in the last example, have it as optional so they can get to it if they want. When you're going to have a lot of content, I think the point is to make it bite-sized in the beginning, and then have different ways to dive deeper if it's something that's of interest to them, because you certainly want to keep them engaged throughout all pieces of the sales funnel and their engagement. But also chunk that information, even if it is a longer piece, break it down into those digestible pieces. And then the show, don't tell, showing those real world applications is so key. That's what turns it from a passive experience to a really engaging experience. And I'm going to show you an example now of a great show, don't tell. So this is HubSpot's website grader interactive content. And what this is, so HubSpot, one of their areas of expertise is web strategy. So they consult with companies on how to take their website and really make it a great tool to use. So you go to, I'm going to jump to it now. You go to the grader and you enter your URL and your email, and then you click submit. And I just put in target.com because I was just there recently. And this is what you get. So it tells you right here in a very visual way that, you know, how your website scored. So in this case, it was a 68, but it breaks that down into bite-sized pieces so you can see how they ranked on performance, SEO, mobile, and security. And then on the right side, there are a lot of different ways to dive deeper. So you could go into a free course to tell you a little bit about these different areas. It, again, just with some visual icons, it breaks this down. It empowers the user also by giving them some strategies that they could do on their own. But really the point of this show, don't tell experience is to then connect you with a HubSpot expert to help guide you through this experience. So they're really demonstrating their expertise, not saying we can do it, but showing that we can do it. And here's how. And then, of course, there are videos and trailers. So I love this example because it is totally personalized and customized to each individual. And that is going to make it much more memorable and user-friendly too. And then just like with that example, you really want them, your point of your interactive content, yes, you want to get their attention, and yes, you want to keep it. You want them to linger with your content, But really, you want them to take an action. You want them to make a purchase or share your site or your interactive content with others, maybe like them or that are also in that similar buying cycle. So here are some ways to encourage that empowerment. Just like with a HubSpot, you want to personalize that experience when you can, and then give them the opportunities to share it, to contribute their feedback, and then really to, when you can, embrace that user-generated content that they're sharing. It really makes them feel that sense of ownership when they have a voice in your product. A brand that does this well is Starbucks. So they have various campaigns where they use interactive content. You don't typically think of Starbucks as a digital brand or a technology brand, but at various times throughout their year, they have a Magic Cup augmented reality app. And if you've noticed, they have different designs on their cups or their packaging or their store signage throughout the year. And so one of the things that they have done with this Magic Cup app is to create this augmented reality experience. So this video is showing you, and hopefully this is playing okay through Zoom, but it's showing you how you can use it during their Valentine's Day campaign. So you download the app and you can create a customized virtual Valentine and send it to one of your contacts. It also allows you to scan your cup with the various designs or store signage or packaging, and see these different experiences that come to life, and then you can share those experiences too. In the Christmas holiday, they have sledding dogs that come to life as you're scanning your phone and other things like that, and it's very shareable. So they've taken what is not thought of as a digital brand and really leveraged interactive content to to engage their users and to make it something that keeps it memorable throughout the year. And those stories are really what help you remember what you're learning. If you are soliciting stories, that's great. You have permission to share those from real individuals. That's wonderful. If you're writing stories to include in your collateral, there are some tips on screen that were created by or published by Kathy Moore, who's one of our learning industry experts. And she's really an expert on writing scenarios that a learner can engage with that is just realistic and makes you want to make real world choices as you go through it. But it applies to interactive content too, in that you want to tell a story that's emotionally compelling, that should be a complex challenge that someone is facing and then overcoming with your products. You want to stay away from those stock images of just people smiling or, posing, and use realistic and real photos if you can. And then again, that concise conversational writing is so, so important. So last year, New Vodka, if anybody's familiar with this brand, they took home a Platinum Marcom Award for their Legends campaign. And it's pretty simple, the concept here. On their website, they have different cocktail recipes that you might imagine making with their vodka. But they wanted to wrap personas around each of these cocktails. So they started a campaign where they are soliciting stories, and they encourage people to use these various hashtags and tags and tell people about an experience, a funny story of a time when they were sipping these cocktails, but in a real world environment. And then they took those stories and wrapped them into this campaign and told a story, talked about the persona, made it funny, but then also shared the cocktail recipes. So again, just a really simple way to get your customer base engaging with you, contributing their own stories and experiences. It makes it relatable, makes it more memorable, and it really added a little bit of fun to their brand. So these have all been, so far that we've talked about, design strategies. So as you're thinking and brainstorming about the type of interactive content that you want to create, some writing and design storyboarding strategies to use to make sure that you are really going to capture their attention and then ideally hold it long enough for them to take some action with your brand. Now we're going to talk about format, which is what the question was about earlier, some different formats of stackable and snackable content. So short content, but that also can build into those more thorough, deeper dive pieces. And as your brand is going to have a ton of content. As you're curating what you already have, a tip is to think about, how you can slice that content into even just 1-minute chunks or even 1-sentence chunks, and then present it in a lot of different formats that require different times. I mean, sometimes somebody will just be standing in a grocery store line and have 30 seconds, 2 minutes to look at a piece of interactive content. Other times, people want to spend a lot of time going through it, or even a combination or an online course about your product or service. And the more they get engaged, the more content and deeper dive they want to go through. So I challenge you to think about different formats for the same content. So we've talked about some already, but there are so many that you can choose from. You could do an interactive timeline showing, your evolution of your product or service. You could do, we talked about a report earlier, but there are ways to make that interactive. You could do an interactive slider where you see a before and after version of, before using your product or service, or after, a comparative analysis. You could do digital flashcards. You can do social media challenge like the nude vodka example. You could do a parallax mini site, and we'll talk about one of those in a minute. Another format that you might not have thought of, or maybe you've been doing this for a while, is a calculator. So the example here, this is one we created that allowed you to customize your educational device. So you make choices as you go down the page. You're given a certain allotment of credits, and you can really craft this example. And I should mention too that all of the examples that I'm sharing today, there's a couple slides at the end that has links to all of these. So if you'd like to explore a little deeper, that you can. And if you need to contact me, you can contact Principal Technologies, and our website is principaltechnologies.com. You can also do a dial. Now, this is a great way to, and I'll show you an example here, to let people play around with different criteria. So in this case, and this looks great on mobile as well, you are selecting different components in different categories. These are, and then some are grayed out, as you can see. And then you get results, and it shows different ways. This was an expert example, so these are different devices for testing. So
I don't think the interactive piece is coming through.
Oh, it's not?
No.
All right, let me try. Let me reshare. You see it now?
I just see the outline of the slide deck. Might be a little odd if it's not, if you're using two monitors, maybe.
Still not coming through?
It's up, it's just not, I think it's the
You're
slide.
You're just
yeah,
the deck version.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Let's try one more thing. All right, let me know if that.
Yeah, there we are. You got it.
Yeah, okay. All right, great. Thank you for letting me know. So this is it in action. So you can turn the different layers of the dial. in different categories, and it will only show you the ones that apply. And then when you click Get Results, similar to the HubSpot grader in some ways, it gives you options to learn more, or you can just begin again. So this is a format of a calculator, but you could also do something somewhat similar for an ROI calculator, which we've done quite a bit. And again, that's a show, don't tell format. Another example, and I'll just stay up on the web view. Hopefully you can see this. This is a virtual booth. So this is one format that grew during COVID because people weren't traveling to trade shows nearly as much. So in this virtual booth, you can see an overview of the booth, but you can also jump around to any of these areas, and you can just jump in this way as well.
Welcome to the Roofer Technic virtual experience.
And that gives you many different options for how to engage in this content. So you can jump into these different virtual rooms, and then it gives different choices for videos. So this is, again, mimicking what you might experience in a real world environment, in a real world trade show booth, where you've got people talking, you've got other people watching these videos with you. But this is a great simulated, and I haven't had any issues at all with the tech on this. So it plays very well. I even like the addition of the plants. So this is a great virtual booth, and this also won a Marcom Award last year. And then you could certainly have embed into this other ways to play with your product or service in the same way that a lot of VRs or virtual reality experiences are being, you'll see headsets in a real world exhibit booth where you can see a deep dive inside of a product or using a product. You could do this inside of a virtual experience as well. And then back to, let's see if I can switch back over. Ben, are you seeing my PowerPoint now?
Yep.
Just want to check.
You're good.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. So where you might have a traditional print brochure, you can make that interactive by making it an interactive PDF. And even, an interactive PDF is still very shareable and emailable, but you can jump around in it. You can do, we've done them where you can have like a virtual crossword puzzle. You can embed videos in there. So you can definitely have other media embedded within a PDF. But again, it just takes brochure content, which you could also still distribute, but you can have an interactive version of that as well. And then another format could be just a microsite. So in the vein of chunking up your content, instead of just having everything out on a website where it may be hard to find and digest information, you could take, on this example, what we did was we took a large topic and created its own very small microsite where it had different formats. So in this section, it had just more of a Q&A or FAQ section where we answer the most common questions. And then there's a section on just basics, testing results, and then a primer. So again, trying to digest some very technical information into relatable sort of, using conversational tone, but using real world examples as well. So we could address people all across the technical continuum. And then those are all the formats that I have in the presentation today, but I would love to take questions about any others that you're using or that you're thinking about. And again, all of the examples that I talked about today are on the slide deck as well, if you'd like to go through them.
Yeah, and we'll have the deck posted to competitivemarketingsummit.com. And also, yeah, just to kind of go back, I think, especially as we saw a trend, I think, around kind of the bite-sized content. So it's kind of like these, we did these like checklist kind of pieces of content. So it's like 6 kind of reasons why, and it was or even differentiation. So it really kind of aligned with competitive, differentiation, and those performed extremely well. So I love the different examples that you provided there, and then even making those even more interactive. I haven't gone down that route, but that looks pretty compelling.
Yeah, on the e-learning side of things, we used to do a ton of 60-minute, 30-minute online learning courses. And now most of the courses we create don't even look like courses. They may be 5 minutes long. It's definitely more micro learning. You learn one thing, and then you can piece those, micro pieces together to build a skill set. But everything is broken down into those bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, and that's it's pretty cool, because it's almost like we had to try stuff all over again and see what works. Yeah. Also, in my experience, I think this really goes hand in hand with competitive marketing. It's like those ROI calculators, right? So yeah. I've always used those extensively in my career, and I think it not only helps for kind of an awareness piece, or even allows customers to turn leads into opportunities, but it answers kind of as far as a marketing piece, answers a question up front. It kind of gets that cost objection out of the way up front. So that's something I've always highly leveraged. But I always say be careful of what you do, because you don't unless you really want to be the kind of the ROI cost calculator person for your company. They tend to perform pretty well. So once you kind of go down that route, it's people are like, wow, this is great. so if that's the direction you want to head, I highly advise it.
Another example, we don't have permission to share it, unfortunately, but it was an interactive video. So it was talking about a cybersecurity product. But to make it really interesting, in this interactive video, each person plays the role of a cyber attacker. And so you're in that role, you're playing that persona. And as you go through the video, you're making choices. So you choose which company to hack, in which industry, and then how you're going to attack them. And then when you attack them, you see what happens based on which products they had in place, and for security. So it was a learning by doing, but it was also fun and story based.
Very cool. Yeah, this is great, Tracy. This is gives me some good things to think about. Appreciate the questions that came in from our listeners and viewers. Like I said, I'll have this posted back up on competitivemarketing.com once we finish this up, so you can access this presentation as well as the pieces of content and examples that Tracy shared. So thank you again. And just if you go ahead in the next slide, I want to remind people that we do have an August webinar coming up. And this is competing in the virtual world. So as we're kind of making that transition, I think, to more in-person contact, it's every company's kind of taking a different approach at this, right? So in my company specifically, we have saw this as has seen the pandemic as we had no travel during the last 2 years. So that was a lot of budget that we're able to spend other ways. So I think as companies are kind of coming back to in person, these are opportunities to for companies to kind of scale back their travel expenses. So there's still a huge demand for kind of the virtual outreach. And my friend and colleague, Rana Salman, will share her insights around competing and primarily in sales, being able to provide some good sales enablement and creative sales enablement around what we're facing and where we're transitioning. So we'll see Raina on August 9th. And let me see if there's any other questions that popped up. Nothing right now. So Tracy, thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation, so I appreciate it. And thanks again too to Principal Technologies to help us keep things going here in Competitive Marketing Summit.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next month.